Today we are talking about Spellbreak. Spellbreak is a game that I played in its very first alpha iteration, I would say, that made it to the public, which was back then extremely rough around the edges. Since then, the game has come a long way and has recently been released on all major platforms, being PC, Switch, PlayStation and Xbox. So the game has really been improved upon in a lot of ways. Today we're going to look at the good and the bad. Now first of all, what is Spellbreak? Spellbreak is an ability-based battle royale in its current concept at least. That means if you're thinking battle royale, it's probably closest to Realm Royale, though not quite the same. It has very interesting, unique concepts that you wouldn't really find otherwise in the genre, even though we have to say lately with Fall Guys the genre has been broken up a little bit in what it can be anyways. But even if you're not a fan of Battle Royale games, this review may still be worth watching, which is something that I'll get to later. First, let's talk about what's really good about the game. The mechanics of the game are excellent. While in its early development stages the game was laggy and clunky, it is now super fluid and offers a lot of different play styles and mechanics that you can toy with. This is combined with beautiful visuals, as you can see. There are really nice effects especially, but the art style is also very unique and it stands out in a very good way. The combat as well as movement across the maps not only comes with high mobility, but also high verticality, and I think that makes it very interesting. You have to be able to aim at flying opponents, and you're also able to move very quickly in a fight, making it very easy for you to juke attacks, which is even more amplified with certain subclasses, I would call them, with certain specs that give you more ways to increase your movement in a fight. How fighting works is extremely interesting, and in order to understand that, I have to explain the concept of weapons or spells in Spellbreak a little bit more. You start the game with a single glove, so this is your main weapon, which you choose before the game. And this glove will have an element. This glove allows you to fire a projectile, which depends on the element that you chose. For example, if you chose a fire glove, then you will throw a fireball, or if you chose an ice glove, then you will shoot an ice lance, which you can use as kind of a snipe projectile. It's like a crossbow type of weapon. And then you have other weapons. For example, you have an earth glove or some ground glove or something, which is a ground smash that has a little bit of a shorter travel distance but more damage, and so on and so on. Along with that, you have a secondary ability which covers a larger area and typically does more damage or has a stronger effect. Some examples would be the ice glove, which freezes enemies in an area around you, or the poison glove, which throws out a toxic cloud. Where things get really interesting is when you pick up your second glove. You have two hands, so you get two gloves in the game. And for that you can pick up a secondary element. And these elements actually interact. So you have two different types of projectiles that you can fire, which can often be useful, for example having one glove that is more short range but higher damage, and one that is more long ranged and deals maybe less damage at closer range. And then you have the secondary abilities. And if you, for example, throw out a toxic cloud with a poison glove, and then you shoot a fireball into it, then the cloud will explode. Or if instead you have an electric glove, then it will turn into some shock cloud. Or if you have an ice glove, then the cloud will freeze if you fire at it, and will actually turn into a solid block of poison. As such, you partially decide your playstyle at the start of the game when you choose your first glove, but then depending on which glove you get after that, your playstyle can drastically change as well. And often you may want to change the glove because you get a higher rarity version of the secondary glove, which may be better than whatever else you have. So for example, if your secondary glove that you pick up is a common rarity fire glove, but you find an epic or legendary shock glove, then you probably want to change that even if you prefer a fire glove, just because you get so much more damage out of it. In addition to that, you can also equip another extra ability, which will allow you to, for example, reveal enemies on the map or go into stealth temporarily, and here you again have rarities as well. From the start of the game you're also able to jump and then hover around or fly a little bit, but what's important with basically all of these actions is that most of them use mana, so you have to conserve your mana in a fight and choose which abilities are the right ones for the right situations, and the more abilities you miss, obviously, the more mana you burn as well. So it's very important to play things right, and I guess on a high level of play that makes a massive difference as well. The game offers further depth beyond that by different equipment pieces and upgrades that you can collect throughout a match that, for example, allow you to cast spells faster and things like that, and also increase your armor. And then you also have consumables to heal things back up. And then outside of the match, you can also pick up specific perks that you can utilize or that you can choose from and make your character stronger with that as well in different ways. So there's a lot of stuff that you have to keep track of if you really want to optimize your character, and then in every game things change anyways. And all these things considered, I have to say the game feels surprisingly balanced. This may be due to a very, very long alpha, but still, it could have come out in a much worse state than it is right now. I don't think it's 100% balanced, but it's pretty close to that considering how early in the release cycle we are. But you know what's coming now? There's a big but in the title, and that's what we have to talk about as well. The game is not without flaws. We'll start with some minor ones and then come to the big one. First, it has kind of lackluster cosmetics in my opinion for a relatively high price. That actually surprised me because that is their monetization model, and I think they have to ramp up the quality of those significantly if they want to really keep people in the game and be able to monetize it as well. One comparison that has been brought up a lot for this game is Realm Royale. I have played Realm Royale in its early stages, and I have to say that this comparison is unfortunately not really matching. I do think that Realm Royale was a fantastic game in its early stage, and I do think that Spellbreak is a good game in its early stages, but they are very different in many ways. One of the big selling points that Realm Royale had, and that Hi-Rez unfortunately very much missed out on and kind of ignored that part, was that it appealed to more than just shooter players. And I think that is the case for Spellbreak as well, but at the same time it is still relatively aim heavy. It doesn't use traditional weapons in that concept, but it still is very much closer to shooter games and requires about the same level of aim and prediction of directions and whatnot than most other shooter games, whereas Realm Royale had some options that drifted very far from that. They had axes, they had swords and all that stuff, and they also had these melee-ish focused abilities that you don't really see in Spellbreak. I do think this is something that Spellbreak could expand upon, because especially their earth-focused, ground-focused glove goes in that direction with that closer range attack and everything, but right now it's just not there. Maybe they will release new gloves that go even closer to that and maybe give you a dash as a secondary ability that brings you really close to an enemy and then melee damage or something, but for now that's not the case, and it's gonna be hard to implement due to the super high mobility as well. It also misses out on other unique concepts such as the Forge, where you could create weapons for killing a lot of enemies, whereas in Spellbreak I often found that killing enemies isn't exactly all too rewarding unless they happen to have exactly what you want. Another problem that I personally had is that I felt the game gets old relatively quickly. The combat is a fair bit of repetition really, because you often face enemies with similar loadouts, because it seems to be that certain loadouts are just preferred, and I don't know, I felt like playing like 2 to 3 rounds, but after that, each time I played I was like, yeah, that's enough, I don't really need more right now. Maybe that's just me, I can't say, but it didn't really catch me the way that other games do. I think part of that is their launch strategy. They initially launched with 3v3 as the only game mode, which I found very frustrating. I actually made another video first and then scrapped that because I had that as a more heavy focus point. But since then, they have fortunately released the 1v1 mode as well, which I think is more fun because getting stomped by a pre-made of 3 alpha players really isn't all too fun, especially if you're playing with randoms. But with solos being released and duos being on the horizon, that is no longer a problem. And last but not least, the biggest issue for me with this game is that it's a battle royale. I think that the genre can have its appeal. I think, for example, Fall Guys shows us that battle royales can be fun as well, but I don't think it's the best fit for what Spellbreak could be. I think Spellbreak would be an absolutely fantastic game if it was a 5v5 arena concept, maybe with rounds as well, a larger-ish arena where you can have a lot of fights happening everywhere, or maybe even a bigger battleground than that. And I know they tested something like that at some point, and they kind of played with the idea of it multiple times, but they wanted to launch as a Battle Royale initially. And I think that's unfortunate, because I think if they launched with more than just a Battle Royale mode, they would have caught a larger group of audiences from the start. People like, for example, me, who plays Smite, that maybe would have not normally checked out this game, would be much more interested if it was more than just a Battle Royale, because those team fight games are becoming more and more rare, interesting enough. And I think Spellbreak would be the perfect fit, and I think it actually fits better than what it currently is. Maybe have something similar to CSGO, where you get improved loadouts every round and you can invest into certain things or something, just to have this kind of increase of stats throughout the fight as well, or have people level up as the longer the fight goes or something like that. But just having this whole BR component, which is just running around and collecting stuff in it, doesn't feel good to me. I think the combat is way too infrequent, considering the large area that you're fighting in, which is tied with a low number of enemies to fight as well. So really a lot of it is running, and I think that could really be improved. And I think another game mode would do that better than just making a smaller map or something. I think Battle Royale just comes with so many frustration factors that will just drive people off the game if they're not doing well enough and they get eliminated early a few too many times and they're out of the game. Whereas a game mode where you would respawn would not have the same issue. And I really hope that the devs strongly consider that later down the road, because I do think that Spellbreak has massive potential in that regard. If they bring this game to a point where it has an arena mode or a 3v3 mode or something that's not focused on the Battle Royale aspect, and then tie that together with some more melee focused abilities and some more range focused stuff, then I think this could be a massively successful game. At the end of the day, that is just my personal biased opinion as a Smite player, I suppose. But at the same time, I'm probably mostly speaking to an audience of Smite players, so it does make sense that I think at least some people would feel the same way. And that is it for today. If you're among the 57% of people who are not subscribed and watching this video, feel free to click the sub button. It really greatly helps me out and I much appreciate it. And other than that, I hope to see you for the next one soon. We'll have a lot more games to talk about, as well as some Smite stuff. Duke Sloth, out.